Obito's character is controversial in many ways. He is a man who chose to destroy the world because of one woman. He is the monster who betrayed his master, who caused the death of those who once called him friend, all for love. He dismantled the original Akatsuki, corrupted its ideals, and weaponized peace as a smokescreen for revenge. He started wars to fulfill his own ends, and we hate him for that. But maybe we shouldn't hate him. Not just yet. Because hate is the easy part. It's simple to despise someone who chose to let the world burn for the sake of a single heart. What's harder is to understand the slow collapse of a soul that could have been a hero, and what it says about the stories we tell about grief, delusion, and selfishness. Obito Uchiha is not a misunderstood savior. He is a selfish man. But his selfishness is what makes him the greatest villain in Naruto, because it's all too human. When we first meet Obito, truly meet him, he's just a boy, warm-hearted, idealistic, and full of dreams that remind us more of Naruto than of Madara. Those who abandon their friends are worse than scum. He says words that ring through the series like an echo of what could have been. In another life, he was the protagonist, the foolish dreamer, the underdog who just needed a little more time. But time ran out. We often forget that Obito died before he became a villain. The boy who gave his life to protect Kakashi and Rin was buried beneath rubble, and what emerged later wasn't rebirth. It was corruption. The hand that saved him belonged to Madara Uchiha, a man with a plan so grand and poisonous that it would take a century to unfold. But Obito didn't need convincing. He only needed one thing: a window into the world's cruelty. There is something important about the way Rin dies. It's not just that she dies in front of Obito. It's that she dies by Kakashi's hand, the friend Obito entrusted with his dream, the boy he envied, the boy who now stood over the body of the girl they both loved. And it's not just that she dies, it's that Obito watches from behind the glass, powerless and hidden. He sees the very moment that confirms his worst fear, that reality is broken, and that the rules of the ninja world offer no protection for kindness, for loyalty, for love. This is the moment Obito dies again, not physically but spiritually. His hope becomes grief, his grief curdles into rage, and that rage needs a purpose. That purpose becomes the Eye of the Moon plan. What makes Obito terrifying is not that he wants to destroy the world. It's that he wants to replace it with something better. The Infinite Tsukiyomi isn't just mass delusion. It's a projection of his fantasy. It is Rin alive. It is Kakashi forgiven. It is a world that never betrayed him. And that's what makes it selfish. Because he is not trying to save the world. He's trying to replace it with one where his trauma never happened. He doesn't want people to be free. He wants them to be asleep. Not because they asked him to save them, but because he couldn't bear the pain of letting them live. It's the kind of evil that wears a smile. The kind that says, "I will save you," while chaining you to a lie. And the scariest part, we understand why he does it. Obito is often compared to Naruto, and the comparison is deliberate. They are foils, two boys abandoned by the world, shaped by grief, who cling to the people they love like anchors in a storm. But where Naruto becomes a bridge, Obito becomes a wall. Where Naruto chooses empathy, Obito chooses control. And where Naruto fights to protect the dreams of others, Obito imposes his own dream onto the world. He is the betrayer of the very values he once died for. He betrays Minato, his sensei, whom he later kills in cold blood. He betrays Kakashi, his rival and brother, whom he manipulates and torments for years. He betrays the Akatsuki, which once stood for justice in a broken world, twisting it into a tool for war. And he betrays himself, the boy who believed in friendship, in love, in peace. He looks in the mirror and sees a god, but we see a coward. Obito wears many masks, And not all of them are physical. When he first re-emerges in the world of the living, we don't know his name. We only know Madara. Later, Toby. Then, no one. And finally, Obito. But notice how long it takes to get there. That name, his name, is buried under layers of falsehood, control, and fear. And for a good reason. Because Obito doesn't just hide from the world. He hides from himself. Claiming Madara's name is more than a trick. It's a rejection of his past. It's a boy declaring to the world, I am no longer weak, no longer naive, no longer Obito. He becomes a legend, because legends can't feel heartbreak. A name like Madara can't be betrayed. A symbol doesn't cry. But the truth that he's just a grieving boy with a broken heart is too unbearable to face, so he buries it. In the lies he tells others, in the wars he starts, in the face he wears. Toby is a particularly clever deception. His clownish behavior, his feigned incompetence, it makes him invisible. And invisibility to Obito is safety. If no one sees him, they can't hurt him. They can't recognize the pain that still clings to his voice. In a way, Toby is the truest mask. Not the Madara persona or the Sharingan-fueled spiral, but the idea that he is nothing, a joke, a ghost. Because if he is no one, then he never failed, he never lost Rin, he never died beneath that rock. He gets to pretend none of it ever happened, and he clings to that fantasy with the desperation of a drowning man. But there's irony here. For a man who claims to reject his past, Obito is consumed by it. In discussions about Naruto's villains, Madara and Kaguya often take center stage. After all, Madara was the architect, the god of war, the one who almost succeeded in reshaping the entire ninja world. And Kaguya, as the origin of chakra itself, stands above all others in terms of raw power and threat. But Obito, he started it. Madara may have planted the seed, but it was Obito who watered it. Obito who twisted Nagato's pain into submission. Obito who recruited Itachi, who unleashed the Nine Tails, who turned children into killers. Obito who pulled the trigger on every domino that fell. Madara dreamed it, but Obito did it. And what makes him more dangerous than Madara is empathy. Obito understands people, their fears, their grief, their pain. He doesn't see himself as a god above humanity. He was human, still is. He uses that familiarity to manipulate, to seduce, to break people from the inside out. Nagato believed him, Konan trusted him. Even Kakashi for a moment doubted himself when facing the specter of the friend he once failed. Obito knows that power doesn't always come from strength. It comes from conviction, and his was absolute. That's what makes him the real final villain. Not because he's the strongest, but because he's the one who chose evil every step of the way, in full awareness of the cost. In the final moments of his life, Obito switches sides. He sacrifices himself to protect Naruto. He apologizes to Kakashi. He speaks with Rin in the afterlife and seems at peace. And fans are left with a question. Did Obito redeem himself? The answer depends on your definition of redemption. If redemption means acknowledgement of wrongdoing, yes, Obito does that. If it means taking action to protect others, yes, he dies for that. But if it means undoing the harm he caused, then no, it's not enough. Because there is no apology that can bring back the lives he shattered. No selfless act that erases decades of war, pain, and corruption. His sacrifice while moving is still centered on Obito's pain. His final moment of clarity is still about him finally becoming the man Rin could be proud of. It's poetic, sure, but it's still selfish. And maybe that's the point. Because Naruto has never been about perfect redemption. It's about understanding the broken pieces within ourselves and choosing in every moment to be better. Obito failed that test more than once. But when it mattered most, he made the right call. Too late for the world, but maybe not too late for his soul. Obito is the villain, right? After all, that is what we have built up to till this moment. and that's what the narrative tells us. But every time I rewatch Naruto, I can't help but feel uneasy when I hear those words. Because if Obito is the villain, then what do we call the world that created him? A system that trains orphans to kill before they can read. A world where children wear headbands heavier than most adults' regrets. A world that calls bloodshed, duty, and trauma loyalty. When Obito declared war at the Kage Summit, it wasn't just a villain's monologue. It was a eulogy for a world already rotting. A world where the Kages, the so-called paragons of peace, had all at some point outsourced war to the Akatsuki. Think about it. The 5 great nations, those proud, towering institutions, had mercenaries and war criminals to do their dirty work. The same organization they would later call terrorists, they once treated like disposable tools. And when those tools turned against them, they acted shocked, as if the monster hadn't been their own reflection. And here's where Obito's twisted brilliance shines. He didn't just see the cracks in the system. He was the crack. He was the scream echoing from behind the veil of shinobi politics. He was a truth so raw, so uncomfortable, that the world had no choice but to call him evil, because admitting he was right would mean confronting everything they stood on. Take the Hidden Leaf, the so-called beacon of hope. They massacred the Uchiha clan, covered it up, and fed their lies to a new generation. They fueled wars in the Hidden Rain, backing Hanzo's brutal regime, destabilizing an entire country just to prevent power from shifting. They let Danzo operate from the shadows, a man who blackmailed, assassinated, and manipulated at will, all while being hailed as a true patriot. And let's not forget about the other villages. The Hidden Cloud tried to kidnap children, first Kushina and then Hinata. Their thirst for bloodline power outweighed any idea of honor. The Hidden Sand allied with Orochimaru to betray the Leaf, knowing full well he was experimenting on children. Obito didn't invent cruelty, he just refined it. He didn't betray the shinobi world, he mirrored it. He was the answer to the question they were too scared to ask. What happens when someone stops pretending that this world is just? I mean, it is not justice to gang up on one village. All nations came together to destroy one clan, the Uzumaki clan. That is not justice. That is not penance. And it's in that answer that we find something terrifying. Obito might be the only character who fully understood the shinobi world and chose to burn it down rather than keep lying to himself. When I think about Obito, I think about Plato's allegory of the cave. A prisoner trapped in a dark cave sees shadows on the wall and believes that's the entirety of reality. Then one day he breaks free, climbs out into the light and sees the world as it truly is. But here's the twist. When he returns to tell the others, to share the truth, they hate him for it. They call him mad, dangerous, evil. Now replace that man with Obito. He is the prisoner, crushed under rock, under grief, under lies. Then he escapes, guided by Madara's teachings, and emerges with a new understanding of the shinobi world. That all of it is just shadows on a cave wall. Illusion, projection, manipulation. He tries to explain it, tries to show others. And when they refuse to listen, he forces them. Because he believes that if he just burns the cave down, they'll finally see what he saw. That peace is only possible through unity. And unity can only come from an illusion. In that sense, Obito isn't just a madman. He is a philosopher turned radical. A man who believed he had awakened from the dream of the shinobi world and returned to shatter its illusions. But maybe, just maybe, the truth is darker still. Because while we see Obito as the man who left the cave, there's another possibility. What if Obito never escaped at all? What if he simply stepped into a new cave, one built by Madara, by hatred, by delusion, and convinced himself it was the light? But again, another possibility exists. What if the world of the shinobis are the ones still chained to the wall, calling justice what is, well, merely survival? That's the genius of Obito's character. Obito isn't the greatest villain in Naruto because he was the most powerful. He wasn't even the most destructive. The title probably belongs to Madara or Kaguya. No, Obito was the greatest villain because he understood. He understood the heart of the shinobi world, how it runs on sacrifice and silence. He understood how easy it is to justify horror when it's dressed in the flag of a village. He understood how everyone, from the Kage to the lowest genin, plays a role in maintaining a world where peace is temporary, and the next war is always being prepared in secret. But more than that, Obito understood people. He understood that everyone is one tragedy away from becoming him. And that is what makes him terrifying. Because in Obito, we see a man who once stood for everything good. Loyalty, kindness, hope, and watched it all be crushed in a single moment. One rock, one broken body, one dead girl, that's all it took. And before we dismiss him as weak, let's be honest. How many of us would have held on to our ideals if we had seen what he saw? If we had been betrayed by our mentor, used by our enemies, erased by our allies? Naruto talks about the power of never giving up, but Obito never gave up either. He just gave up on them. He believed that the world couldn't be saved, only rewritten, that peace could not be achieved through conversation, only control, that the Shinobi world would never stop using children as weapons unless someone forced them to live in a dream. When he confronted Naruto and Kakashi and told them the world is nothing but a cycle of hate, he wasn't lying. He was offering proof. He had lived it. He had been it. And that's what separates Obito from the rest of Naruto's villains. Orochimaru wanted knowledge. Pain wanted to end pain. Madara wanted his youth back. But Obito wanted to kill hope itself. He wanted to shatter the illusion that peace is possible without a price. To show the world that ideals are nothing but stories we tell ourselves to make the blood easier to wash off. He didn't just challenge Naruto. He challenged the entire narrative of Naruto. He asked, what if the villains were never the ones in cloaks? What if they wore headbands? What if they smiled and talked about peace, all while planning assassinations behind closed doors? What if good and evil were just words, and all that mattered was who won? This is what makes Obito the greatest villain. Not his power, not his crimes, but the fact he saw the truth and decided it was too ugly to live in.